In the first weeks after the baby was born, Grace barely slept. She was doing everything alone. Feeding, changing, holding Lily through every cry. She was tired, but her heart was full. But that morning, something changed. Someone arrived. With a smile so warm, Grace almost believed it. Margaret, her mother-in-law, didn't ask to come in. She just stepped inside, like she owned the place. Grace tried to be polite. She forced a smile, even though her body screamed for rest. Then Margaret said the words that would change everything. "You look exhausted, dear," she said softly. "You're a young mother. You don't know how hard this will be. Why don't you let me help? Lily needs someone who knows what they're doing." Grace's heart tightened. The way Margaret said it, it didn't feel like help. It felt like a warning. But Grace didn't know. Margaret hadn't come to help. She had come to take control. At first, Margaret acted like she only wanted to help. She spoke gently, moved slowly, smiled sweetly. But every hour, Grace started to notice something. Margaret wasn't helping. She was taking over. Every time Lily cried, Margaret rushed in before Grace could even stand. "Don't worry, dear," she would whisper. "You rest. I've raised a child before." At first, Grace felt guilty. Maybe Margaret really just wanted to help. Maybe she was overthinking. But then, things got worse. In little ways, tiny comments, quiet whispers. Margaret made Grace feel small. "Maybe you're not producing enough milk. Lily stops crying faster when I hold her. Motherhood is hard for inexperienced girls." Each comment was soft, but each one left a bruise. And Michael, her husband, he didn't see it. Every time Grace tried to speak up, Margaret flipped the story, made herself the hero, and made Grace feel like the problem. And slowly, painfully, Grace felt like a guest in her own home, a stranger in her daughter's life. And Margaret? She looked like she was finally getting what she came for. Grace tried to hold herself together. She tried to smile. She tried to pretend everything was fine. But inside, she was drowning. She barely recognized herself anymore. The mother she thought she would be, the mother she dreamed of becoming, was being stolen from her, one quiet moment at a time. But the breaking point came one night when she walked into her own living room and found something she never expected. They were laughing like a perfect family, a family Grace suddenly felt, pushed out of. And then Margaret said it, in that soft, sweet voice that hit 1,000 knives. "Michael, doesn't she look just like us?" She said it while holding Grace's baby, in front of Grace. Grace felt something inside her snap, something deep, something quiet, but powerful. That night, Grace didn't sleep. She sat awake, holding the edge of her bed, wondering if she was losing her daughter and her marriage at the same time. She whispered into the quiet room, "I'm her mother. I'm her mother. So why does it feel like everyone else gets to be, except me?" And for the first time since Lily was born, Grace felt afraid of losing everything. The next morning, Grace woke up to silence. The kind of silence that makes your heart drop. Lily always cried at sunrise, but not today. She rushed into the living room and stopped like someone pushed all the air out of her lungs. Margaret was feeding her daughter, not Grace, the mother. Margaret didn't even look surprised to see her. She just glanced up and smiled. "She woke up early," Margaret said. "You were tired. I didn't want to disturb you." She said it like she owned the moment, like she owned the baby. Grace felt her chest twist. She barely even touched her daughter that morning, because someone else had taken the moment from her. And then Margaret said the words Grace would never forget. "Lily feels safer with me. Some babies just know who really cares." It wasn't just a comment. It was a knife. A slow, quiet, cold knife. And Grace felt it. Every piece of her heart breaking, one quiet second at a time. Grace didn't plan to explode. She didn't wake up wanting a fight. But pain has a way of speaking, even when the mouth stays quiet. She took one step forward, one shaky, terrified step, and whispered the words she'd been holding for weeks. "Give me my baby, please." Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was broken. But Margaret didn't move. She held Lily tighter, like the baby belonged to her. "You're too emotional," Margaret said quietly. "You need rest. Let me take care of her." But Grace heard something else. Something colder. Something darker. She heard the truth. Margaret didn't think she was a mother. She didn't think Grace was enough. "I said give me my baby," Grace said again. This time with strength. This time with fire. This time, like a mother. Something in Margaret's face changed. For the first time, she saw Grace not as a scared girl, but as a mother. Slowly, unwillingly, Margaret placed Lily back into Grace's arms, and Grace held her daughter tight, like she was holding her entire world. In that moment, Grace didn't win a fight. She reclaimed her motherhood, and nothing would ever be the same again. Michael walked in just as Grace clutched baby Lily to her chest, shaking and crying, and for the first time, he didn't see a dramatic wife. He saw a broken mother fighting for her own child. Margaret turned toward him, smiling the same gentle smile she always used, the smile that hid the truth. But this time Michael didn't smile back. He looked at Grace, her trembling hands, her tears, her fear, and something inside him finally clicked. "Grace, what's going on?" he asked softly. And Grace finally said the words she had swallowed for months. "She took my place, Michael. She took our baby from me." The room went silent. Even Margaret's smile faded. Michael's face changed slowly, from confusion to shock to guilt, because deep down, he knew Grace wasn't lying. He had just been too blind, too tired, too distracted to see it. And now the truth was staring him in the face. Michael didn't know what to say at first. He just stood there, staring at his mother, then at Grace, then at the baby in her arms. For the first time since all this began, he finally saw the damage. The fear in Grace's eyes, the pride on Margaret's face, and the truth between them. "Mom, what are you doing?" Michael whispered, his voice shaking. Margaret smiled like nothing was wrong. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm only helping. Grace is overwhelmed. I'm just being a good grandmother." But Grace flinched. Michael saw it, and something inside him cracked open. Michael stepped closer, his voice tightening. Mom, give her the baby. Margaret blinked, confused. Michael, darling, you can't be serious. Look at her. She's emotional, unstable. No. Michael's voice didn't shake this time. She's the mother. She decides, not you. Grace covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to break. She had waited for anyone to stand up for her. Margaret's smile faded, for the first time. And that moment right there, that's when everything changed. Because sometimes, the strongest thing a man can do is stand between the woman he loves and the person hurting her, even if it's family. If you've ever felt silenced or controlled or blamed when you were the one hurting, you understand Grace. And mate, if this story hits your heart, please subscribe to KindSoul Corner. We tell stories that remind you that you matter. Margaret tightened her grip on the baby, but then she saw Michael's eyes. Firm, hurt, unshakable. Slowly, reluctantly, she placed baby Lily into Grace's arms, and Grace held her daughter like she had been drowning, and finally reached air. Margaret stood there, frozen. 4 years, she had been the strong one, the one who never cried, the one who controlled everything so nothing could ever hurt her again. But when she watched Grace hold baby Lily, the way a real mother holds her child, something inside her cracked. Her lips trembled, her eyes shifted away, and suddenly, she didn't look like the powerful mother-in-law anymore. She looked like a woman who had been carrying a wound for far too long. Michael stepped forward carefully. Mom, what's going on? Why are you acting like this? Margaret swallowed hard, and for the first time that day, she looked like she might break. Margaret finally whispered, her voice soft, almost childlike. When you were born, Michael, I didn't get to hold you. Michael froze. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. They took you away for 2 days because you couldn't breathe. And no one let me near you. Her breath trembled. I sat alone, terrified, wondering if you would die. And I never forgot that feeling. Grace's arms tightened around Lily. Michael stepped closer, gentler now. Mom, you should have told me. Margaret shook her head. I thought, if I could just hold Lily, if I could just have another chance, maybe I could fix the moment I lost. But the truth was out now, and the room felt softer. Grace stepped forward slowly. Margaret, I didn't know, but you can't heal an old wound by creating a new one. Margaret looked at her with wet eyes. Grace continued, voice trembling but kind. You don't have to steal love. You already have a place in Lily's life. But you can't take mine. Silent tears streamed down Margaret's face, because she finally understood the pain she caused, not out of hatred, but out of fear. And fear can make people do things they never meant to do. Stories like these remind us of something powerful. People who hurt others are often hurting inside themselves. But healing starts with honesty and courage. If this moment touched you, please subscribe to KindSoul Corner. Here, we tell stories that heal, stories that remind you you're not alone. The room was quiet now, not heavy anymore, but fragile like something broken that finally stopped fighting against the truth. Grace shifted Lily gently in her arms. She took a deep breath, then stepped closer to Margaret. Her voice was soft, but steady. the kind of strength you only earn after being hurt again and again. Margaret, I'm not your enemy. Margaret looked up slowly, her eyes swollen, her shoulders shaking. Grace continued, I know pain makes people do things they never thought they would, but I can't let that pain fall on Lily, or on me. Michael swallowed hard, watching both women. Grace's hand trembled, not from fear, but from the courage to finally speak her truth. I forgive you, but things will be different now. Margaret shook her head slowly, voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you, Grace. I just wanted to feel close to something again. Grace nodded softly. I know, and Lily will know you love her, but you must love her as her grandmother, not her mother. A tear finally slipped down Margaret's cheek. Michael sighed, relief mixed with guilt, mixed with gratitude, because this moment, this was what he prayed for. Not anger, not revenge, but honesty. Grace held out her hand, not in defeat, not in weakness, but in peace. Margaret reached for Grace's hand slowly, almost afraid she wouldn't be allowed, but Grace held it, firmly, warmly. Margaret whispered, I will do better. I promise. Grace nodded. Michael stepped closer and wrapped an arm around both of them. The first time the family felt whole since Lily was born. They weren't perfect. They weren't healed completely, but they were honest now, and honesty is where healing begins. Life doesn't always heal in one moment, but hearts change when truth finally takes the place of fear. If this story touched something in you, if you felt the pain, the healing, the courage, subscribe to KindSoul Corner. Here, we tell stories that remind you that broken things can still become beautiful. A quiet morning settled over the Harris home, different from all the mornings before. Not heavy, not tense, just peaceful. Grace walked into the living room holding Lily close to her chest. Michael stood near the window, sunlight warming his face. And Margaret, for the first time in weeks, was smiling softly, not taking, not controlling, just being present. It wasn't a perfect family, but it was finally a healing one. Michael walked over and wrapped his arms around Grace from behind, something he hadn't done in a long time. He kissed Lily's head, and then kissed Grace's cheek. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Grace closed her eyes. For the first time, she believed those words. Margaret watched them with tears in her eyes. But this time, not tears of loss. Tears of understanding. Tears of letting go. Later that afternoon, Margaret stood to leave. She walked to Grace slowly, carefully, not wanting to overstep. May I? She asked. Grace nodded and gently placed Lily into Margaret's arms. For the first time, Margaret held the baby, not like something that belonged to her, but like a blessing she was grateful to be trusted with. She whispered, Thank you, Grace, for giving me another chance. Grace smiled softly. Family deserves more than one chance. And so, the Harris home didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became honest. It became safe. It became new. Because sometimes, family isn't healed by being right. Family is healed by choosing love after the truth finally comes out. If this story touched your heart, even a little, then you belong here. Subscribe to KindSoul Corner, where every story reminds you that broken things can still become beautiful again.